Today we have with us Martin Dagnall, and Martin is the head of the training division at First Choice Group, who deliver the commercial catering equipment electrical competency course on behalf of the Foodservice Equipment Association and CEDA. My name is Keith Warren, Chief Executive of the Foodservice Equipment Association. Good morning, Martin.
Morning. Nice to see you, Keith. How are we doing?
Good. And Martin, electrical safety is critically important for everybody who's involved with food service equipment, whether that be the site operator, the facilities manager, the installer, or the service engineer. Can you tell us a little bit more about the course, perhaps where it's come from and what it seeks to achieve?
I can certainly, yeah. Yes, you're right. Electrical safety is very important especially in the commercial kitchen, and that's really what's guided this course. As you're aware, I've been in the industry now since the mid-80s, and started off as doing an electrical apprenticeship back then. But even though I was working within the industry when I did my electrical apprenticeship, the apprenticeship was still based around, domestic wiring and house wiring and so on. But of course, you learn the fundamentals and you do learn the safety around electrics. But when we look at the commercial kitchen and what sometimes as technicians, and I was obviously a technician for the best part of 25 years on the road, and as a technician, when you walk into a commercial kitchen and you see some of the environments that you have to work in, and I'm not going to say restrictions, but the safety element that you need to consider in that environment, the chances are you're working there on a piece of equipment as a technician, but the kitchen still goes on around you. You've got chefs, pushing past you and still making the lunches and the dinners and so on. Back in the day, I worked in central London for a few key sites. I looked after the aubergine for Gordon Ramsay. I worked with Marco Pierre White. So those sort of kitchen environments, as well as working in larger establishments like hotels, hospitals, and key things like that. So over the years, even myself, and I didn't realize this until I started looking at this CSEC course, as we call it, the Commercial Catering Equipment Electrical Competency course, or CSEC for short. When we started to look at this and design that in association with yourselves and other trade associations and also sitting guilds, it really made me look at and consider my own safety when working on equipment, because you do become complacent. And over time, I'll hold my hands up and say, there was a certain little things that I'd got used to doing in my own little habits that I realized actually I'm taking little risks here and I shouldn't be. And whether they're risks to me for my safety or people around me in that environment. So you need to consider both. So we really wanted to put something together with this course that was specific to catering engineers. So your standard electricians working in houses, building sites is one thing, and of course they're very skilled and very qualified in that instance. But in our industry, we don't always see qualified electricians. Now, that's not to say that there aren't quite a few of them out there, but we have a situation that for many years, BS 7671, which is the electrical regulations, was always had a word in there which I hate, which was competence. And up until 2014, if you looked at the definition in the British Standard, it said that you were able to work on electrics if you were competent to do so. Now, that didn't mean you needed any qualifications or any certifications at all. If you'd been working in the industry for a number of years and you'd been on maybe manufacturer's training, so you were confident working on that equipment, then you were deemed competent to work on electrics. Now, back in 2014, when BS 7671 was the 17th edition, they brought out an amendment and they actually changed that definition, and they did away with the term competent person. And they removed that. And if you look up person in the wiring regulations, since then, and since it's changed to the 18th edition in 2018, it's kept this new terminology. And the terminology is, if you look up the definition of a person, there is a technical person, no, sorry, I'll rephrase that. There is a skilled person, there is an unskilled person, or there's an unaccompanied person. Now, if you're a skilled person, it means that you've had training and assessment to show that you are capable to work on that situation. If you're unskilled, then obviously you haven't had any assessments or training, so you shouldn't be touching electrics at all. If you're accompanied, then what that means is someone else is taking responsibility for you. So you can carry out the work, but someone's watching over your shoulder, someone's looking after the safety aspects around it. So really that's where this course came from, because we wanted something for the technicians within our industry, because there are a lot of technicians in our industry that don't have a formal electrical qualification. A lot of them have come from, as gas engineers, plumbers. That's not to say that there's not a lot that do have qualifications as well, but even those with qualifications, like myself, were originally based around domestic house wiring, and don't always consider the risks when working in a commercial kitchen. In fact, the Electricity at Work Act 1989 actually states that it's illegal to work on live electrics. But it then goes on to say, in some circumstances, there is no way of testing certain situations without testing it live. But it then comes up with a whole list of restrictions that we need to consider. And obviously we go through those in the CSEC course. But it then says that if you were carrying out a task that you could carry out with the electric isolated and you caused an incident, then basically you can go to jail. Okay, you can be prosecuted for it, even if you electrocute yourself. So you can get electric shock yourself and be having a really bad day because your arm's aching all day because you got a shock off of a dishwasher you were working on in the morning, and then you get home at night and police bang on your door and arrest you for electrocuting yourself. So not a good thing to do. So we have situations where even qualified electricians coming on the training are saying to me sometimes, I don't really know why I need to do this course because I'm a qualified electrician. And I explain that to them myself. I explain, well, so am I. But when I was designing this course, it really opened my eyes and made me consider the safety in a commercial kitchen. So the course itself is based around safe isolation, lock off and dead test. That's the key thing we want people to take away. That's the safest way of working in a commercial kitchen. Of course, it covers the fundamentals of electrics, Ohm's law, resistance calculations. We talk about components and component testing. But there is a City and Guilds test paper to go through because it is City and Guilds accredited. Remember, it's not a qualification, it is an accreditation. And there's also a practical assessment that we do for City and Guilds accreditation, which is based on safe isolation, lock off and dead testing. And of course, all the equipment that's associated with that as well.
Thanks for that, Martin. And I think it's important to build on the case that where you are with the current course was built on the back of the original British Gas course for engineers, and you've taken it and adapted it and done a lot of work with City and Guilds to make it more relevant. And I think you've increased the content and reduced the time frame that you're delivering.
Yeah, it was actually it was Caesar as it was then, and Neffy and Cedar that approached me originally and said, look, this is what we're running, because you were running the program with British Gas. And it was a 3-day course with British Gas, and I was asked to go and sit on that course and see what the content was and see how relevant it was to our industry. And I was actually quite shocked when I did that, because the first thing was, we see a lot of three-phase power in our industry, and there was nothing. Well, there was actually a couple of pages in the manual that talked about three-phase, but over the whole 3 days it was very limited. And again, it was very much focused on domestic house wiring, because it was focused on gas engineers that were going into people's homes. So there wasn't that specific element of a commercial kitchen environment. So yes, working closely with yourselves, with CEDA and with City and Guilds, I was able to redesign or design the CSEC course around that commercial kitchen, but of course keeping the elements of requirements from City and Guilds on electrical safety.
And I think you made an important point there as you went through, with some engineers who come to do the courses say they don't know why they need it. And of course, the guidance and the regulation changes over time. So in that context, and we know with gas engineers, they're obligated to undertake their ACS retest every 5 years. I guess it makes sense for electrical safety for a similar process to be in place for anybody
certainly
working.
Certainly does. And I'll just make it very clear as well that the guys that do say, or not sure I need to be on this so that I'm qualified, actually once they've done it, they're very surprised, because like myself, it does really open their eyes to the safety and or even the dangers and challenges that we see in a commercial kitchen. A lot of the other things we cover is risk assessment, of course. So we go through the whole risk assessment process and how you should consider the risks in, before you even consider starting work in that kitchen, and not just for yourself, but for the people around you and the other people working in the environment. So yes, it is a big issue that we have. And I mean, most engineers I talk to tell the similar stories that I've seen myself. You're trying to work on a piece of equipment and you've got the chef still frying chips next to where you're trying to work. And, and I've seen some real horrors in my life as well. When you walk into the kitchen, you see technicians working on even live equipment. In fact, I had to pull a guy up recently. Well, I say recently, it was probably a couple of years ago now. It was just before COVID, but I walked into a Costa coffee shop, and he was working on a Merry Chef Icon 2S oven, and he had all the casing off it still on the back counter behind the staff, and he had it switched on with the casing off, and staff were reaching across the top of it to get cups off of a shelf. It's like, there's no consideration for the safety of people. So,
and I think an important point, and we should probably focus on it as well, those problems that you can observe going on in a workplace. There's also the hidden challenges, and we know there are fatalities that come about where equipment isn't connected to some form of a earth leakage switch, and an RCD or an RCBO, and probably we're on bound to the industry to make reference to that today.
Unfortunately, we do see that. We have seen incidents in the past, and it is important. And I know as an industry, we are trying to push that protection side. And you talked about regular updates, and I believe that updates are critical. And unlike the gas technicians, the electrical technicians aren't reassessed. And we're trying to put a program in with the CSEC, because obviously we've had great take up on it, and I think it's been a great benefit for the technicians that have done it, and also their employers, because it gives them peace of mind. But we're looking at maybe having a 5-year review, even a 1-day, almost like a refresher course, CPD day, just to keep people's minds fresh. So hoping to do something in the near future with that, because it's been running for a while now. But we also add bits and pieces to it. The main content of the training stays the same, because it's electrical fundamentals and general health and safety. But we've added the SESREB electrical safety in commercial kitchen guidance into the handbook, and we talk about the RCDs or RCBO requirements, or guidance that we would recommend in our industry. So it is a big factor. Yes.
Thank you for that, Martin. So in closing, the requirement for the course is, yes, to protect the safety of the individual. That's a critical factor. Protect the safety of the directors of businesses and their managers who are looking after those individuals, and to ensure that the safety of kitchen staff when they're using that equipment. And I think if for no other reason, any operator should make sure that the staff that are working on their equipment are suitably qualified, and should ask the question of whether those engineers, those technicians have attended the CSEC course. I will just also add that it's an intrinsic part of the FEA accredited service provider scheme to demonstrate the competency of electricians. And if anybody wants to check those out, go to fea.org.uk, click the influence tab at the top of the page, and that will give you a list of accredited service companies whose technicians and engineers meet the requirements of the current standards. So thank you very much, Martin, for the update on all of that. If anybody needs any more information, keith.warren@fea.org.uk, and we'll be pleased to link you together with First Choice as our delivery partner for the CSEC course.
That's lovely. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.